So good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for When Black Women Lead, a conversation about voting in the 2020 census. I'm your host, Allytra Perryman, Mississippi State Conference Convention Planning Chair, and we have my sister leaders here on our panel today. So we have Ms. Nsombi Lambright-Haynes. Nsombi is the Executive Director of One Voice, a statewide leadership development and policy advocacy organization headquartered in Jackson. The mission of One Voice is to magnify voices of traditionally silenced communities in the South. Nsombi is also a life member of the NAACP, serves on the City of Jackson Civil Service Commission, and served on the transition team of Jackson Mayor Chokwe Lumumba. We also have Ms. Cassandra Welchlin. Cassandra is the state director and state organizer for Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable, an intergenerational statewide network dedicated to increasing civic engagement and voter participation among Black women, while at the forefront of championing just and equitable public policy on behalf of Black women and girls. Next, we have the Arekia Bennett. Arekia is the executive director of Mississippi Votes, a youth-centered civic engagement organization that has tremendously increased civic participation amongst voters ages 18 to 35 in the state of Mississippi. Arekia is a native of Jackson, an organizer and political strategist. So welcome, ladies. How y'all doing today?
Doing all right.
Very good.
So we're going to jump right into this thing. Black women in Mississippi have always been on the front lines of civic engagement. Activists such as Fannie Lou Hamer have really blazed a trail to make sure that everyone has access to the ballot. So let's start off talking about how the work of some past activists inform your voter engagement and advocacy work. So Arekia, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, what is there not to learn from Black women in Mississippi, right? So Fannie Lou Hamer, yes, Ella Baker, Annie Devine, Victoria Gray Adams, all of those women have, after studying them, have truly informed my strategy and the organization's principles and our mission at Mississippi Votes. And what we're building on, like I said, is truly informed by them. And our staff is about 90% led by Black women. And we are just learning from not just the past, but also the present context of organizers like Nsombi, Cassandra, and so many other people, so many other Black women, particularly on the ground, fighting for electoral justice each and every day. And it's part of the reason we launched our One Girl, One Vote Fellowship, because we've seen time and time again women's leadership get diminished in history books or, not even written at all. And so we were thinking, what if we started a program where Black women, Black girls were not only co-creating legislative policy, but also like learning how to lead political strategy and data management on campaigns. Typically, when you walk into a campaign staff, you see a number of people of color leading in different aspects of the campaign, like scheduling and whatever. But what if the Black girl from Jackson or the Mississippi Delta was your campaign manager? So those are the types of things that we want to be up to. And the spirit of those women is deeply, deeply running through the veins of that program.
Thank you, Cassandra. I'm sure you want to add something.
I do.
I'm coming to you next.
Actually, it was so funny as Arekia, she called out the names that I was going to talk about. As I was thinking about this conversation, I actually went back and read a little bit more about, Fannie Lou Hamer and Annie Devine and Victoria Gray Adams and and Moody, and I just wanted to just connect my heart back to them. And one of the things that came to me, like, why was this so important, how it informed my work, is that, one, I lead from my convictions and my values. And my convictions and my values are around, that every life matters, right? And everyone should have dignity. Everyone can self-determine. Justice is important. Truth-telling is important. Intergenerational organizing is important. And these are the things that was important to these ladies. And yet they were just everyday people who had a conviction to just do good, and who love people. And that's my heart. That's my heart for doing this work. It's not just my head and my hands, but it really is my heart connected to this work through those values and those principles. And those ladies, they were bold. Flonzie Brown, right? She was bold, and she just kept moving and going. And so, and then it also goes back to my grandmother, right? And my mom, who just continued to serve, and who just believed in the dignity of people. And so that informs the work that I do every day, from taking care of my kids to me just advocating, doing the advocacy work that I've been doing for a long time, just having the experience of being mentored by so many people in Mississippi. And I think what's amazing about Mississippi itself is that we still have so many activists from time, that they're still here and they still mentor you, and that's amazing. And then we're able to also mentor others. And so I'm moved by my convictions. I tell people, when God made me, he put an extra dose of justice inside of me, and I get fired up when there's injustice. And so that keeps me going, keeps me fueled, and yeah, and that's what keeps me going, because Black women have always been at the head and the forefront of that, but it's because of their convictions, that everyone should have the inherent right to live a dignified life.
Thank you. Come on, Nsombi.
Look, yes to everything that Arekia and Cassandra said. Yes to all the names that they've already raised. And Cassandra, you are absolutely right. We've been so blessed to be able to see these walking history books like Flonzie Brown Wright and Constance Slaughter Harvey. These are people, who not only, we've had access to in terms of hearing them speak, but, we've sat with them at tables to plan work. So, we got some real hands-on training from a lot of our sheroes, and then being able to know and understand our history of those trailblazers that, have passed on before we got involved in the work, was just so instrumental in our training and upbringing. And, we understood real early on that, a lot of the men in leadership, they couldn't do a thing if it wasn't for the women that were, pushing them up, pushing them on. And so we learned that very, very early, and understood, how to work around it and work over it and just keep the work moving.
Amen. Amen. She preached the word. The Mississippi Civic Engagement Roundtable is offering grants up to $5,000 to organizations conducting nonpartisan voter registration, GOTV, and voter protection efforts during the November 3rd general election. This is funded by Vote Your Voice and Black Voters Matter Fund. The deadline to apply is September 14th. For details, visit onevoicems.org. So we know that Black women have been one of the most civically engaged groups across the country and across this state. So I'm going to start with you, Nsombi. Let's talk about what is at stake in this election cycle. This is a critical year. And how can we make Mississippi's electoral process more inclusive?
Oh, boy. Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot at stake on this ballot. We have a critical presidential race. We have a Supreme Court race that's extremely important. We can add a second African American to that important body. There are school board races in certain districts. So there are some very important Senate race. So we have some very, very important races, not to mention the ballot initiatives that folks will be deciding on medical marijuana, the end to Mississippi's electoral college when it comes to electing members of the House of Representatives, and of course, a new state flag, which has been a long time coming. So it's going to be a very long ballot, but we're really encouraging folks just to, stay the course, fill the whole thing out, just take your time in completing the ballot, go all the way to the end, because every selection on that ballot is going to be critical to the future of Mississippi. And in terms of enhancing, I always think about our brothers and sisters who are disenfranchised with certain felony convictions in Mississippi. If we could overturn that law today, we would change the face of Mississippi immediately. Mm-hmm. Mississippi politics would change immediately.
That's right.
And that is just a critical area for us to continue to work on, to continue to push, not only to change that law that takes those voting rights away, but to also encourage individuals who have been disenfranchised to try to get their voting rights restored through the legislative process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cassandra, I hear you.
Yeah, as Nsombi was talking, I kept thinking about connecting the dots, because that's how I think about the work. And when we talk about voter engagement, it's about the issues too, and how policy and laws, and I say it all the time, impact people's kitchen tables. And so this election is important to people's kitchen tables. And we know COVID has exacerbated the issue more and more. And who is really at the center of this? I mean, it's Black folks, at the center of this, and Black mamas, single Black mamas. It's Black children that's at the center of this. It's Black men that's at the center of this. So it's from our healthcare issues, we've seen so many. We've seen our Black community become, really impacted by COVID-19, from having either a lack of access or having bias, just reek through the healthcare systems when they're seeing their service providers, the service providers not believing them when they get to the hospital and they say, go home. From, Black folks not being a part of a lot of research and data or polling, so that this can inform how services are delivered. So, I'm thinking about all of that, the childcare situations, families, people lost their jobs and they don't have money to pay for childcare, or they had to go to work and their hours were cut, which meant that they lost their childcare, or they ended up getting food stamps, or they lost their food stamps when they got the extra unemployment benefits. So they lost their food stamps, and they still ended up having to be at the food banks. So this election is so critical to that, just wages and healthcare and, pregnancy accommodations, all those things that we work on at the Black Women's Roundtable, but so many around the state. We got to connect the dots. And when people go to the voting booth, our message is you're voting on your kitchen table. How much food, how much money you have in your bank account, like what's your cash that's left over, right? What's your childcare needs? Like all these things are just critical and important, from broadband. So that's how I'm looking at this election. And so we need people to really get out there, and vote, and to understand the connectivity. And that's how we are making people aware on the issues, right? Because Black folks, and particularly Black women, we really vote around the issues. And so that's how we're thinking about it. And this election just so key to that process.
Thank you. Thank you. Arekia.
Yeah,
Her Wakanda look itself. Don't she look good?
Don't she?
So I think that Cassandra and Nsombi are saying, the only thing that I would add is like literally Mississippi has an election every year. And I would argue that every year is a critical year for Black women and girls, Black queer and trans folks, Black gender non-conforming folks, because every year our identity is on the ballot and it's up for political debate, up for discussion, up for public consumption. And so I think that not only are those issues around criminal justice reform, healthcare reform, education, I think literally the way that we're talking about identity politics and these interlocking oppressions, like every single person who is on the ballot represents some form of our being. Not knowing the issues that the candidates are running on is life and death, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we've been trying to do is create an all-inclusive, very expansive voter guide at Mississippi that allows voters to essentially take a quiz, and it says, how far are you on this spectrum? Like, what do you care about? If you care about criminal justice, if you care about healthcare and climate change, like which candidates are talking about your issues. That way, your ballot, your decision at the ballot box is informed by your material conditions versus like, oh, I like this person. And so I agree with all of the things that Nsombi and Cassandra are saying. And I will also add that in terms of expanding the electorate, we've got to be really creative about how we're talking to our legislators about the modernization process, right? So like Mississippi is one of the only states that doesn't have online voter registration, one of the only states that hasn't implemented VBM, vote by mail, and one of the only states that doesn't have automatic voter registration. And it's like, we don't have an excuse anymore to say that these things don't work, because literally across the country, we've seen them work. And we also know that these things don't, overnight make it better. It just makes it more effective and more expansive, because we all know what happened in Wisconsin during the primaries. But what I am saying is when you open up the pool for a number of more people to engage, the tide can shift a little bit more. And then the words of our organization can become more true about a truly transformative culture of civic engagement where people are seeing themselves as viable characters in their own lives.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Yeah, I love it.
Absolutely.
We need your help. The Mississippi Election Protection Call Center is looking for volunteers for the upcoming election. Visit onevoicems.org to sign up. So this is also a census year, decennial census every 10 years. We're in 2020. Cassandra, let's talk about the impact of the census on Black women in terms of housing, education, healthcare, critical services.
It goes back to what I was saying, earlier, the critical services that, so many of our Black women need and our children, depend on. Mississippi gets a large pot of money to support, the safety net programs that keep our families afloat. And I just want to pause right there because the problem with that is there's inequity, right? So we really shouldn't even be having to talk about that, right? The safety nets that's supposed to support the families. But we do, and we know who's at the middle of that, and that is Black women, who is really at the center of it, because there's a lot of inequities that exist there. And then from Black women, it's Black men and our children, right? And so we really shouldn't have to even be saying, go ahead, complete the census because, you need those safety net programs. but it's because the inequities and the structure of racism that exists that creates these barriers that make our people continually to be dependent on it. It's just a system, right? And so, but because we're at that, we have that kind of infrastructure based on capitalism. Now I'm getting in my philosophy hat and my, teaching hat, but because of that system, then our families are dependent on food stamps, on childcare, on the voucher programs that get them Section 8 housing. And so if they're going to continue to get that, we just need people to complete that census. And what our message is, Black people, go get your money. And how you get your money? Go complete that census. And that's your money. And that's what we need. And that's some of the work we partnered with, One Voice on, to get the word out that you got to complete this census. And what's, sad too, is that the administration, the White House, they have cut the timeline down, where we had an extra month. Now, unless it's changed, and Nsombi, you can correct me, but now it's down to September 30th. And there are not a lot of resources. There are not a lot of people in the field like they used to be. And so we need people to complete that census because our communities really need it because of the structural inequities that exist. So so that's what I got. That's what I got to say on that.
So Nsombi, Cassandra kind of kicked it over to you. Let's talk about the census and the importance for Black women and Black people in Mississippi.
Oh man, Cassandra talked a little bit about the just the benefits for families, first and foremost. And so, we have that. And then we also just have a basic needs for our families. When you look around at cities like Jackson and other municipalities around the state, and you think about a public transportation system and why we don't have an adequate public transportation system so that people can get from A to B. The census determines stuff like that within a 10-year span, and people don't understand how important that 10-year span is. I mean, you have a child that could, go through their entire school life within that process. So we really can't afford to skip it and sit it out. It's so critical. And even when you talk about those emergency services, I'll never forget one of the first conversations about the census that we had. We were people from Holmes County that had been impacted by a storm. And, they went to apply for federal aid, and like their little area in Holmes County didn't even exist, wasn't even on the map. That's census stuff. That's census stuff. And so we really, really have to make sure that we're counted, so that we can improve our systems right now, and so that we can look at our representation and look at the way our political lines are drawn, so that we can increase our voice both at the local level and state and federal levels.
Let's get fired up and ready to vote. Remember, absentee ballot applications will become available for Mississippi citizens on September 4th. The first day to vote absentee is September 21st, and the last date to vote absentee is October 31st. Arekia, let's talk about the census just a little bit.
Nsombi hit it dead on the head. The only thing that I will add is that if nothing else, COVID-19 has exposed that the amount of clarity that we all should be seeking around the injustices that Mississippi particularly is facing in terms of like how resources are allocated. And some of that is a direct correlation to failure to complete the census. And so I'm just going to plug the census website. Just go to www.2020census.gov and fill it out. It literally takes 10 minutes. My staff and I have, been on challenges throughout social media since the census began in April. We took it, and it maybe took us 7 minutes, and we were trying to figure out who could take it in the shortest amount of time. Of course, I won, but it's really simple, quick, and to the point. So, holler at me if you need help filling it out. I'm serious about it. It's so important.
Okay. So, in closing, Cassandra, let's talk about the work your organization is doing around around civic engagement, increasing voter turnout, and census participation.
Yeah. So, the census work, as I said, we partnered with One Voice, and we partnered with child care centers and other organizations just to remind them to get the word out. And so we've been doing no contact canvassing. So we got some door knockers, and we worked with the data mining people to tell us where there was low count, and we went into those neighborhoods and just put those door knockers on the doors just to remind people to complete your census. Actually, we have a campaign called Do 2 in 2020, census and voter registration by October 5th. So one side of the door knocker said, go register to vote. And the other one said, complete your census by this date. And so that's some of the work that we've been doing. We'll also be doing some high school challenges around the state to just make sure that folks are, these high schools turn out their people to vote. And then the other thing that we've done is, our goal is, as Arekia said, we have elections every year. And in Mississippi, Black women have the highest voter turnout in the country, but it's usually just during presidential elections. And so we're interested in turning out Black women every election. The same, the increase that we get during presidential elections, we want to see that at every election. And so we're focusing on infrequent Black women voters and making sure that they get out and vote. So that's some of the work we're doing. People can visit our website, msblackwomen'sroundtable.org, follow us on Facebook, and just be engaged. We like to partner because we believe none of us can do this work by ourselves. So we just want to partner with folks to help push the word out. And whatever we can share, we'll do that. And whatever we can do to lend a hand, we'll do that in the community.
All righty. Arekia, let's talk about Mississippi Votes and what you're doing around voter engagement and census participation.
So y'all might have to stop me because this is my favorite thing.
All righty.
So we were a little discouraged in the beginning, I'm not gonna lie, because we were finally getting our door knocking stuff down packed, and we had some goals that we wanted to meet. But COVID-19 has made some provision for us to be very creative in the field. And so we've done a lot of, we've always done digital organizing, but we've done a lot more of digital organizing and creative content around the census and this election cycle. And so we've been able to create several different platforms where people are able to consume things. So I'll just quickly go down them. We started a podcast for super voters. Typically, young people between 18 and 35 are consuming our information. They listen to podcasts. There's a lot of information that will be coming out soon during National Voter Registration Week, the week of September 20th. And we've watched some YouTube content, and we've launched our democracy class where folks who are in the community, it's typically for our high school students, but people in the community are welcome to join, where we're talking about not just, vote, but like, what does this stuff mean anyway? Like, what is an attorney general? What is that? And breaking it down for people to understand like how government actually works, like why your vote matters. Every year we launch our Up to Us campaign. It's 16-week grassroots mobilization effort where we're registering voters, knocking on doors in communities, doing political education forums, making sure that we're hyper visible and making sure that community knows that there's probably somebody next door to you who's connected to our organization who could probably help you register or check your registration status. So we've gotten billboards, we've done text banking, we're still doing text banking for the census and phone banking. We have a presence on all 17 colleges and universities, about 29 high schools across the state are connected to our work, and their parents are involved. And so we're creating an ecosystem of not just young leaders, but of folks who are really want to be embedded into this political process. And so 32 counties have our footprint placed strategically about, and we've launched our website that is full of voter services where you can go and download your voter guide. That, like I talked about earlier, it gives you some tools to like know who your representatives are and how and where you're going to vote. All of those different things are on our website. You should go visit it. It's really cool. www.msvotes.org. But yeah, we're always like looking for new volunteers and new and innovative ideas so that we can keep people involved. Young people are a growing voting bloc, the largest right now, and it is so important to foster those relationships and keep those relationships as authentic as possible, because those are the young people who are, gonna lead the state. So, I'm so excited about what we've been able to do. Typically we would be registering in record numbers by now. But COVID, this public health crisis has really kind of halted that. However, the tools that we're offering for people to self-determine those things are just beyond our imagination, and our digital tools and all of the partnerships that we have with folks like One Voice and NAACP have been like really helpful in reaching communities that we typically don't serve, like folks who are 40 and older. And so we're sending them different flights of mail where they're able to see that, oh, I can vote by mail if I'm 65 and older. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Just go to the website.
Give us the website one more time, Arekia.
It's msvotes.org, and do /vote. It'll just take you straight to like checking your registration status.
Thank you. Awesome work. Now, the great Nsombi, tell me, what are they doing at One Voice to increase voter engagement, protect that vote, and make sure that we are participating fully in the census?
Yeah, well, we're most excited about our partnerships through our Civic Engagement Roundtable that we run with the NAACP and Mississippi Votes and Black Women's Roundtable and a number of other state and local organizations. So that gives us a chance to come together across geographical lines and talk about what's happening throughout the entire state. So we're really excited about some of the work to add structure to our roundtable and to bring people together. So we're very excited about that. And so just Arekia talked about the frustration with COVID this year, and our outreach strategy significantly changed. So we've been doing a lot of phone banking. And so we've had volunteers just to call folks on that van list and just say, hey, have you completed your census yet? And now we're, of course, transitioning to, hey, have you completed the census, and are you registered to vote, and did you know that you can vote by absentee ballot? And so, the script is getting longer, but we're still engaging in communication with folks. And then, like you said, protecting the vote is so critical right now. So we have our election protection program. A few years ago, we decided not to shut down our toll-free number. So that 888-601 vote number runs year round, and on non-election cycles, it just rings directly into the state NAACP office. But we will have volunteers manning that number virtually this year to talk to voters about any problems that they're having. And we'll also have legal assistance for folks that are having problems in their polling places. Okay.
So tell us a little bit more about the One Voice census work.
Oh boy. Yeah. So early on, we just started looking around the state at those places that were hard to count in 2010, and just really like prioritizing those areas to help them with build their infrastructure if they needed assistance. And one of the tools that the census provides is the ability to set up complete count committees in those places. And that's just a body of folks, community leaders that come together to make sure that there is no stone unturned, when it comes to reaching out to communities to get them to complete the census. So we've set up several of those complete count committees in places, and including here in Jackson, to make sure that all community stakeholders are at the table, and we're reaching all communities, within these municipalities. We've also set up, it's not hotspots. We've set up places and where people can come and use a tablet to
like a hub of some sort.
Thank you, Allytra. I was like, oh, what is that word? Yeah, we set up hubs in places like Humphreys County, where people could come and complete the census. If they don't have access to, that technology at home. So that's another way that we've tried to, make sure that everyone had access that needed it.
Great, fantastic. Complete your census today. The deadline is September 30th. Already completed it? Help your friends and family complete theirs at my2020census.gov. So I want to thank you, ladies. Thank you, Cassandra, with the Mississippi Black Women's Roundtable. Thank you, Nsombi, with One Voice. And thank you, Arekia, with Mississippi Votes, for the work that you put into your organizations to make our communities better and more just and equitable places for everyone. So I want to really thank you, ladies. I love you, and I'll see you soon. Let's continue the good fight, the good work.